Welcome to the Grow Track, where it's all about moving from working in your business to leading your business. You didn't build your company to be stuck doing $10 an hour tasks. In this session, Morgan Knox, a seasoned business coach, director of accounting solutions at Housecall Pro, and widely recognized industry personality and consultant, joins Chris Olsen, a successful home service pro and owner of Northwest Moss Removal, to show you how to make the shift from operator to owner. You'll learn how to reclaim your time, delegate the right way, and stay focused on the work that fuels real, sustainable growth. Let's dive in and start leading like a pro.
Hey guys, thanks for joining. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. So I'm joined by Chris Olsen of Northwest Moss Removal. Chris, really excited to get to sit down in the studio with you today.
Yeah, really excited to be here. Happy to be able to come down and chat with you about all this.
Yeah, so let's start with the origin story. Where did it all begin, Chris?
Oh man, so that's a little bit of a lengthy story. I'll try to keep it a little bit short. So I am 29. I started in the home service industry technically in high school. I worked construction, worked trade jobs all through high school and early college age. Funny story, I actually worked for the company I own now when I was 17. Started sweeping the shop when I was in high school and then working full-time for them when I was 18. I left a little ways after that and started another company. Ran that company for 5 years doing general contracting work and building cool high-end outdoor spaces. And then 4 years ago, back in 2021, the owner that I had worked for retired and sold me the company I have now.
Incredible. What originally drew you into being a business owner, being self-employed?
So that's also a little bit of a funny story. So I'm also a full-time firefighter. I work as a firefighter paramedic for a municipal fire department. And initially, what got me into wanting to be a business owner is that when you're a firefighter, you have a ton of free time. It's a really fun job. It's really rewarding, really awesome, but you get a little bit bored on your days off because you get so many days off. So my first company, I actually started as kind of like a side hustle. And it was just originally working for friends and family, and then started getting clients, and then started growing. And then a few years later, woke up one day and had 10 employees and a whole bunch of work and didn't really know what happened.
How did we end up here?
The first company I started was almost on accident. I joke sometimes because I started originally, it was just me running around in my pickup truck doing odd jobs. And it started out with handyman sized jobs and then grew to construction sized jobs. And then I woke up one day and we were doing 6-figure sized high-end outdoor spaces with water features and patios and really fancy materials. And it kind of grew on accident. It was one of those situations where I didn't know at the time how easy it was to be successful as a contractor if you weren't a jerk and you treated people right and were just honest. There's so many contractors out there that aren't, and we grew really fast organically before I really intentionally tried to grow.
It's a really good problem to have. And I can tell you're hitting on a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of us can really, really relate to, which is you definitely have the personality type that most of us business owners have, which is you had a little bit of free time on your hands. So you found a way to very effectively fill it.
Yep.
And it sounds like it grew pretty rapidly to the point of, I would say a lot of us probably get to that point in business ownership where at some point starts to feel a little bit like chaos. And so you mentioned you've had a really interesting progressive journey with your businesses. Can you tell us a little bit about, the first business that you jumped into with the general contracting, and how did that eventually grow and evolve into Northwest Moss Removal?
Yeah, so I started the general contracting company on my own, grew it organically from scratch, and I really enjoyed that business, really enjoyed the work. But I realized over time that general contracting work was a little bit more fickle of an industry than I wanted to be in. And even though we did 80,000 the first year, 350 the second year, 900 the third year, 1.8 million the fourth year, and 2.9 the fifth year. And ironically, each of those years we made progressively more revenue and I made progressively less money.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Something that I think a lot of us, sounds really familiar, right? Mm-hmm. So you took a hard look in the mirror one day, you hit the 2.5 million revenue mark, and what did it feel like? It sounds like that was kind of the moment.
Yeah, it was such a weird feeling where we were growing, we were building, we were scaling. We went from me and a couple employees, well, really just me, and then me and a couple employees, and then me and an office staff and 2 or 3 crews in the field. And at our biggest, we actually had 17 employees on paper, 5 of which were in the office. We had full-time sales, full-time operations manager, full-time foreman, and job site supervisors. And I realized one day I woke up and that we were actually making less money than when we only had 4 or 5 people, and we didn't have an office staff, and I was still wearing 10 hats and running around all over the place. It was just, at the end of the day, a lack of systems, a lack of consistency, and like we had scaled in inefficiency, not scaled with systems and scaled effectively.
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting challenge, right? So we know that as a business owner, you can't survive and you can't thrive if you're constantly doing everything. If you're wearing all 10 hats and you're doing all of the $10 an hour work, which is what we're talking about today. How do we get out of doing the $10 an hour work, start focusing on the CEO level, $1,000 an hour work? So one end of the spectrum, you're wearing 10 hats, you're doing all of the things, but on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes if we grow too fast and scale too fast, we turn around, we don't know how we ended up here, and the efficiency has gone completely out the window. So it sounds like you went from either side of the spectrum. How did you eventually start to get to the happy middle? What did that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of that I learned the hard way. And then when I took over Northwest Moss Removal, when I bought it from the previous owner, I still had my general contracting company, but we were winding down, and I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. I bought Northwest Moss Removal from the previous owner when they retired, and I realized that it was kind of a fresh start, and it was a blank slate. The previous owner had run the company for many, many years profitably, but had stayed pretty small. Had just her in the office, didn't have administrative staff or office staff, didn't have systems for kind of getting a lot of those things done. She had handled it all herself. She was kind of the classic example of a good, profitable business, but that relies heavily on the owner doing all the day-to-day. And when I took over, I knew that being a service company instead of a construction company, that the secret to scaling and growth and building that company effectively was going to be to systematize, build out really good systems to run the day-to-day, and then delegate to somebody else. Because I knew that if I tried to be the one sending out every estimate, answering every phone call, running payroll, entering receipts into the accounting system, trying to keep track of materials, ordering this, dropping off that it would be the same monster that I had created the first time. So I sat down and really worked hard on finding ways to be more efficient. Getting into House Call Pro in the first place was one of the big things that I did because House Call allowed me to systematize a lot of the things I was doing by hand. Some of the add-ons like accounting and payroll automated or made certain parts of the day-to-day simpler, and then delegating to my office staff and hiring VAs, hiring an admin team to do a lot of the day-to-day small stuff that was sucking up so much of my time really allowed me to have more time to focus on the big picture and things that actually mattered and not just entering receipts or making phone calls.
Oh, that's incredible. So there's a lot of really impressive things here, and I want to make sure that we go back and we touch on each of those notes. So it sounds like initially you got into the general contracting and you mastered growth, right? But maybe we grew a little bit too fast. And so you realized that you wanted to go back and revisit and master efficiency. So we talk about a lot, that revenue is vanity, but profit is sanity, right? So we wanted to go back in and we mastered the growth model, but now we really needed to master being efficient and profitable. And so the core of that is really growing again with being really intentional. So you listed a lot of different things that you focused on and were intentionally very different about how you handled them. Can you walk us through, I know that everybody listening to this, most of us are familiar with being stuck in the $10 an hour trap, right? All of the different things that you're juggling. And it's really, really hard to figure out, where do I start? What is the piece of this that I can start getting off of my plate and handing off? And one of the big things that we want to remind everyone is that just starting is the hard part, right? Once you get that first thing off your plate, you can build on that tailwind. It's going to give you a little bit of an uplift, and that momentum is going to help you continue to grow that in a really intentional way. So if we think about all of the different things, when you shifted over into Northwest Moss Removal, you had your clean slate. Where did you start? How did you pick that thing that you were going to prioritize?
Yeah, so a lot of you hear this example of little things done every day eventually lead to big change. So what I did is I sat down and I started by making a list of all the things I do every day. I actually took it even a step further, and I actually spent a few weeks at one point about a year ago writing down every single thing I do every day. Like every 10 to 15 minutes, I would make a list of every single thing I did.
I love it.
And then at the end of the day, at the end of the week, I would look and see what was actually important and what wasn't.
I love that. So on the business coaching side, we call it a task audit. That's our fancy term for it. Super powerful. And it's actually, though, funnily enough, like a really hard thing to make yourself do, right?
Yeah.
What did you realize once you finally did it and you looked back at your task audit? Like what came to mind?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing I remember noticing is that I spent, I was working 50, 60 hours a week on top of a full-time job at the fire department. And I was spending a minimum of 30 hours a week, specifically writing estimates, writing proposals, and sending out bids for jobs.
Dang.
Along with that was text messages, emails, phone calls, voicemails, inquiries, all the things that go along with that. Because
it's not enough to just do the work, right? You have to actually talk to your customers. Like,
it's crazy. You do actually have to call your clients back sometimes. They really appreciate it.
This job would be great if it weren't for all the customers, right?
Yeah. Someday when AI is good enough that it can talk to somebody like an actual person, we'll be in really good shape. Well, we won't have to call clients anymore.
I think you're teasing a little bit of your session with Roland that's coming up in a little while.
Maybe a little bit. It's getting close. We're using a little bit of AI in that way, and it's getting there.
That's
getting
amazing.
Pretty close.
So you're working the full-time job. So this is a matter of necessity. So you're a full-time firefighter. You've got this business that's growing and thriving.
Yep.
You don't want to let it get away from you. And so you realize after doing that task audit that you are spending 30 hours a week, you said, just on invoices, estimates, getting things in touch with customers.
Just on proposals. So my company currently, we send out approximately 300 bids a month, because our average job size is only $700 to $1,200.
Oh, wow.
And then we do an average of 80 to 100 service calls per month. And that's actually probably going to double by this time next year. And in order to do that, we have a 40 to 50% booking rate of approved estimates converted to jobs, converted to revenue. And in order to send all of those out, it only takes me a few minutes to do each proposal because we do very simple work. I mean, we're cleaning roofs, we're pressure washing, we're cleaning gutters, we're cleaning windows, but it's a volume game.
Right.
But the thing about that is I realized because of that, it's very systematizable, or not sure if I'm saying that right. But
that's perfect.
Yeah, it's something that I realized I could teach somebody how to do very easily.
Okay.
So I realized I'm doing this task audit that between kind of what an assistant would do, like phone calls, emails, texts, and then kind of an administrative secretary type employee, and then estimation, all of those things put together was easily a full-time job that would be easy to train somebody to do if they had the requisite experience.
And so that's what you did.
Yep. Yeah, I've discovered the marvelous world of VAs, and I have a team of VAs in my office now. I have a full-time administrative / executive assistant, which for those of you listening, if you're a business owner and you do even remotely a decent amount of business, you need an executive assistant. Zero questions asked. If you cannot imagine life without one once you have one.
Yeah, and so then you mentioned to me, Chris, that whenever you were looking at and you realized that 30 hours at least a week of your time we're going to handling all of the paperwork components of just getting bids out, just collecting payments. And then you mentioned to me when we were talking before about how you realized that because it was so systemizable, you just needed to unlock the best and easiest pathway to be able to delegate to your superpowered team of virtual assistants now. So tell me a little bit about what that looked like. How did you figure out what was going to be the best way to, we've got the right person in the seat, but now how do I actually plug them in effectively?
Yes, there's a lot of really good tools for that. One of the most marvelous tools I discovered in this whole process that I never really knew about is Loom. So we use Loom for a lot of stuff when it comes to training. And it's a really simple tool, but it has so much usability where you can record a video of you talking and screen share what you're doing on your screen for administrative tasks. You can walk somebody through what you're doing. You can show them how to do it, similar to if you were on a Zoom call or something like that with them.
Nice.
But then it saves it as a recording that you can then stick on Slack or stick in your messaging center or on Google Drive. And then on top of that, the coolest thing that I found out after that was that Loom actually has an AI that will convert that video into a written SOP for you that you can then put in your company system for a written SOP for that item too.
That's such a good unlock. So tell me a little bit about, we talked about what chaos looked like. We had grown, scaled, everyone's doing a variety of things, but not efficiently.
Yep.
So now we're back in the zone. We figured out how to get really solid SOPs in everyone's hands, and you've established a system and a toolkit that's really, really consistent, systemizable, and scalable. So let's talk a little bit more about what does life look like today? So what all have you managed to successfully delegate and get those $10 an hour tasks off of your plate? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I don't answer my own emails. 97% of the phone calls that come into the business are answered by either CSRAI or my VA. If you text or email the company, it goes through my office team first. So I don't even see them unless it's something that they can't figure out on their own.
Amazing.
95% of our estimates are received, processed, entered, and sent out without me ever seeing them.
Amazing.
My office team handles all of it.
And you're confident in those estimates?
Very, yeah. And the thing is occasionally there's going to be mistakes.
Sure.
I mean, everybody's heard that classic example of if you have an employee that can do something 80% as well as you can, that's a win. You can never expect an employee to be perfect and do everything exactly the way that you would. But if they can hit 75, 80, 85% as well as you would expect, that is a win as far as employees go.
Right.
And if 80% of our estimates are perfect and a couple of them have mistakes, 9 times out of 10, you can call the client and say, hey, so sorry, my office made a mistake. This cost is a little bit off, or this wasn't included and it should have been, whatever.
Right.
And most of the time, clients are totally fine with that.
Totally.
It's very rare you're going to have a client that gets upset about something like that.
And like you mentioned, at the end of the day, it's a volume game. And so if you think about how much more successfully you're able to now with the power of your team, the power of your toolkit, your systems, using House Call Pro for all of that consistency and estimates and bidding. I mean, if you have 1 out of 10 estimates that maybe didn't fully hit the mark that you wanted, but you've got 10 more estimates out than you ever would have, then how much better off are you doing as a result? Yeah.
Well, and it's so interesting too, because when I was doing it all myself, one of the constant things was you always hear speed to lead and that time kills deals. And having an office team that handles all of that means that instead of somebody waiting a day or two for a proposal because I'm busy, I'm at the fire station dealing with family, I'm out on the job site because we're short staffed, whatever it is, those day or two lag times to get somebody an estimate in a service where they want it right then when they book, or they at least want an estimate right now, means that our booking rate went up, our closing rate went up, our speed to lead is so important.
Okay, Chris.
Okay.
I think that we have all had the moment. I think you know what I'm talking about. The moment looks a little bit different. Maybe some of us have had a lot of the moments. So the moment I say 3 a.m. night sweats. You're waking up, you can't sleep, you're thinking about all the things that didn't get done. Feels like that time that you came up across, you hit the wall, right? You're drowning is the phrase that I've heard a lot of pros use. So tell me, what was the moment for you?
Yeah, so I know the biggest one for me that I remember to this day was, I mentioned earlier that my first company, my general contracting company, we had grown year over year. We started at just me. I did $80,000 or $90,000, made 20 or 30. Second year, we did 300 with me and a couple of employees, made 60 to 80K in profit. Third year rolled around, we did 850K, and that was the first year I made 6 figures in profit from the business. And then year 4, we did 1.8 million, and I basically made the same amount of profit or even a little bit less as when we did 800K. And then year 5, we did 2.75 million-ish.
That's just amazing.
Yeah, right around 2.7. And I actually made less money than the year we did 800K. I made barely $100,000 in profit on 2.7 million in revenue.
I think a lot of us that are listening to this, it resonates so strongly because boy, howdy, have we all been in a similar zone before. So it sounds like you felt like you got to this point where growing was actually making your life harder.
Yeah. Well, so I had a business coach at one point that had a pretty funny saying that he would always say, which is you can't scale a turd because it's still a turd. It's just bigger. And
you're just giving yourself bigger headaches.
Yeah. And that's what I look back at is I look back on it and I realized that, I had more revenue. I had more employees. I had more staff. I was doing these big, cool, awesome jobs, but there was lack of systemization. There was lack of processes and procedure. There was lack of accountability, both for myself and for my team. And it just led to so many leaks in efficiency and profitability. And I woke up one day and realized that we made less profit at 2.7 than we did at 800K. And I also, to be totally transparent, I remember looking at my numbers and saying, man, I have 3 different employees that made more money than me this year.
Yeah. And so I think one of the really interesting things that starts to drive to and why a lot of business owners get stuck in that rut is, we bring people on, we know that we need to grow, but we're still doing these $10 an hour tasks, the $10 an hour trap. Why is it that you think that it's so easy to get stuck doing the $10 an hour stuff? Why is it so hard to let them go?
So in my experience, both as an owner myself, with coaching people, with working with other owners, I think the number one reason is that, like I mentioned earlier, 80% for an employee, as far as if you're 100% and you delegate something and they do it 80% as well, that is awesome.
It's success.
But I think that so many owners, the number one thing that leads to this trap is that they think they can do it better. And they think that if they do it better, it'll lead to them being more profitable. I have to enter my own bookkeeping because my accountant is expensive and it's going to take them too long. I need to be the one in the field. I need to be the one selling the jobs. Nobody will ever sell as well as I will. Nobody will ever do this as well as I will. I'm better at this. I'm better at that. And it leads to this trap of not delegating. And it leads to this trap of you doing all these minutia tasks that you could be delegating and being more profitable, being more systematized, and having more time.
Yeah.
And like Dan Martell always says, you can buy back that time by delegating it to somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that's the amazing thing. So well said, the way that you laid that out. And it's like, you think that as a business owner, you're like, no one else is going to do it as well as I am. No one else is going to care as much about it as I do. And you're right. Right? No one else is going to do it as well as you do, right? No one is as motivated as you are to do that. So when I was asking you earlier, Chris, I'm like, every now and again, you get pulled back into the field to cover down for someone. And I said, I asked you, when you think about how you perform when you're out in the field, how is your performance compared to your best performing tech after you?
Yeah. I mean, looking at my own data in our in-house call, we pull data out of house call and create efficiency scores. And I have the highest efficiency score. But it's one of those things where I joke about it all the time. If I'm on a job site with 5 of my guys, there's only one person there who isn't getting paid by the hour.
Right.
And that's me.
Yeah.
And you also hear that classic joke where you go to a restaurant and you'll see 10 people in the kitchen and the guy doing the most work is the one whose name is on the front door.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just the nature of it. And you can't expect an employee to have as much buy-in as you do as the owner.
Right.
There's just, no matter how good of a culture you have, no matter how well you treat your people, nobody is ever going to care as much or work as hard as you when you're the owner of the company.
Right. And so that's where we get to this point, right, where we bump up against the wall and we realize, yes, I can be the master of all $10 an hour tasks. But is that actually still the best value for my time? And when we get to that point where we start talking about operational scale and shifting from, instead of owning a job, owning a business, right? Owning an asset, what's the fundamental piece of that? It's that it has to be able to survive and thrive and live on beyond you. If it can't do that, you don't have a business, you have a job. And so, yes, we can choose to be the master of all $10 an hour tasks, or we can pivot that mindset and realize that maybe it's better to embrace leaning into our higher order functions, the higher value, those $1,000 an hour pieces.
Yep.
So I think that it's easy for us to identify what are the $10 an hour things, right? We've talked about a lot of them. There's all of these different pieces where we're shuffling paperwork, we're doing some customer service, we're doing all these pieces. So $10 an hour tasks, pretty easy to hone in on. The other side of the spectrum, when we're talking about CEO level functionality, you're the leader of the business. What are these $1,000 an hour tasks now? What does that look like for you, Chris?
Yeah, so I can give you a couple of specific examples for us. So for me, one of the biggest things recently is I think a lot of you can relate to how hard it is to find quality employees. And I don't necessarily mean quality as in highly skilled, highly reliable, just finding people that are a good fit for you, your company culture, the kind of company that you want to run.
Yeah, good people.
And having the time to go out and find them. I mean, you all have probably been in that situation where you hired somebody simply because they were a warm body that would fill the role you needed.
Yeah, like you had a hole and you needed to plug it. You're like, all right, buddy, come on.
Yeah, it's like you showed up to work on time, you're not on drugs, and you have a driver's license. Great,
exactly.
You're hired.
Exactly.
And the reality is that over time, that's not very sustainable. So one of the biggest things I've been working on recently is I've put a lot of time into creating recruiting campaigns, working with my social media manager to create content to be transparent, steal people from other companies, to create this culture and this visibility that allows us to find and retain and hire good people. And that not only looks like a system, policy, and procedure for recruiting, but also for onboarding, for training, for their first 90 days of employment, so that we not only find good people, but we bring them in, set them up for success, and we aren't just bringing somebody in, throwing them on a truck and hoping for the best.
Right.
Because I've done that for years.
Right.
And it leads to, like, you look at our retention records and we either keep people for a long time or they're gone in 2 to 6 weeks.
Right. Really, really great example of like the amount of value that you get when you have the mental bandwidth and the capacity to do a strategic unlock, right? To really be able to actually sit back and move past survival mode where we're just treading water, right? If you're constantly in survival mode, you're constantly juggling or drowning in all of these other tasks. You can't even think about swimming for the shore, right? There's no next step. It's just, what am I doing right now to put out this fire? But when you're able to hand those things off, that's a great testament to like one critical area of the business that now you have the ability to move past survival and optimize and really start scaling and adding stability. So now there's even less fires for everyone else to put out too, right?
Yeah, and you have a chance to build systems and build SOPs and be strategic about the business and really look at the business in a way where, how can I grow? How can I build? How can I scale? Not just how do I survive to next week. You get past the point of thinking about like, what am I going to do tomorrow? And think about, what am I going to do in the next 3 months or 6 months or a year?
Yeah.
And it really gives you the time when you delegate a lot of those tasks and get those $10 an hour tasks off your plate. It gives you the time to find those $1,000 tasks, even if you don't know what they are. Example was, we've been in House Call Pro for a while. And when we checked out House Call Pro accounting, I looked at it and I was like, wow, this makes this really easy. It was just something really simple that we could transition away from me having to be involved in it.
Right.
I don't have to look at receipts. I don't have to reconcile things. I don't have to check things and verify stuff. I can basically just pull up a report, look at it, see where we're at, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I can pull data from it to make strategic decisions and involve myself in the company day to day as far as, do we have capital for this? Do we have profit for this? How profitable have we been this week, this month, this year? And it gives you a really quick snapshot of what you're looking at in a much simpler way than trying to open your QuickBooks and spend 20 minutes pulling reports and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. You know, one of the things that I love to discuss with pros is that, you know, as a business leader, you're constantly having to make decisions about the health and survival of your business. But the decisions that you're making are only as good as the information that you have to base those decisions on. And so that's another piece of that critical unlock, right? Is that now you actually have the time and the bandwidth. You're not juggling the information and you're not juggling the data directly. So you have the ability to step back and actually look at it and reflect and think, what is this data telling me, so that I can make better decisions overall for the business?
Yeah, it's hard to make data-driven decisions when you don't have complete data.
Right.
And when you're involved in all that day to day yourself, a lot of times the reason you don't have incomplete data is because you didn't have time to complete it.
Exactly.
So if it's done for you and handled, it means you can just pull a report or look at your P&L or look at your balance sheet and say, okay, cool, that's good. We can do this. If I want to do this, I need this. It just gives you the information you need to, when you sit down to make those $1,000 decisions or come up with those strategic plans, it gives you the data in a really easy to read format.
Okay, Chris. Let's talk about this compounding of the habits and the time and the savings. What would you say to anyone who's sitting here listening to this and like, that's the place that they're in?
Yeah. So the number one piece of advice that I give to people when I talk to them about kind of that feeling or that situation is, usually it's because of overwhelm. It's because you have so many different things that you're trying to figure out. You've got 1,000 things on your to-do list and it feels like you get 100 of them done and then 100 more things show up. And what I say over and over and over is, small wins every day leads to big change over time. So if you have a way to kind of prioritize what things on that massive list are actually going to move the needle, pick 3, pick 5, even just 1, and just get the small things done every day that are going to move you in the right direction. So like Andy Frisella has the power list. You've got Eisenhower matrices. You've got all these different ways of like deciding how important a task on your to-do list actually is. Because if you just have a giant list and you don't know where to start, it makes it really hard.
Right.
So look at your list, pick the things that either A, if this doesn't get done, I'm going to get in trouble, or the things that if I get this done will make a positive impact immediately, and start with those and then work the lower priority last. The other thing is, like we talked about earlier, if that 1,000 things on your to-do list can be delegated to somebody else, hire somebody and pass all of it to somebody else.
All right, guys. So this is your call to action. Pick one, right? One thing. And I recommend go with the easiest one you can find. Get it done today. Get it done this week. Just get it off your plate. You've already got some tools that you can lean on. You've probably already got some members of your team that you can work with. Just start with that one win, get it off your plate, and build from there. Chris, thanks so much for spending the time with me today. And thank you guys too.
So many takeaways. Huge thanks to Morgan and Chris for showing us how to start making those high dollar decisions. Now, if you're ready to take action, jump into our breakout sessions. You can check out tools like House Call Pro's accounting and payroll solutions built to help you delegate, save time, and focus on growing your business. If you want to network or meet with business coaches, there are rooms for that too. Pick the breakout that fits your next move, and we'll see you there.